this is the other thing. Joseph Smith, in discussing what the figures in facsimile number 2, the round picture, the hypocephalus, he didn't specifically name each deity or compartment. He didn't call the central figure Khnum Re. He didn't call the ship, the figure in the ship, Re Horakti, and all that. No, but he gave us their functions. He described the function and the purpose of each of the figures. By going back into the Egyptian thought, we can see, I believe, better what Joseph Smith was portraying to us. There is some very interesting information available to us in this manner, especially in facsimile number 3 with these hieroglyphs that I want to get to. The figure that Joseph Smith calls King Pharaoh, this is actually Isis, the mother of the god. The figure that Joseph Smith calls Prince of Pharaoh is none other than the figure of Mot, the Lady of the West. See, instead of being mortals, these are deities. And instead of being men, they're females. Now, isn't it interesting that in this instance, the critics get very literal? This is very interesting. If we will understand the Egyptian background to this, we will understand the principles that Isis and Mot personified. They may not have been actual women, but personifications of something that the Pharaoh had to be involved in to have a righteous reign and rule. When I discovered this, I was very excited to share it. I'm going to propose that this problem, this supposed problem, is not really a problem, because Joseph Smith's interpretations are based on the principle, the Egyptian principle of deification and identification, even unification with the gods. This is a crucial concept that the critics will not look at in the Egyptian religion. I've even noticed some Egyptologists refuse to bring this thing out. So this is crucial to understand for why Joseph Smith is saying what he's saying in the facsimiles. The Egyptian, as well as the ancient Hebrew traditions, and this is Abraham's world, remember, they concerned this idea with the ultimate deification of mankind. And I discovered this in Leonora Leet's fantastic analysis of the Kabbalah, where she notes in 2004, in her analysis of the Kabbalah, she demonstrates extensively, it's really breathtaking extensive, that the ancient Hebraic doctrine of the generation of the divine Son is the entire point of the Kabbalah. It is to deify humankind. This is the principle. This is the religious core of their doctrine, of their rituals, of their thinking, of the way they live their lives. The ancient Hebrews. Well, now we're discovering, I've discovered, that this is the same idea with the Egyptians, according to several good Egyptologists. They say the same thing. The central mystery of the sun in the Hasidic literature and the Merkava mysticism of the Kabbalah in the ancient Hebrew priesthood is a cosmic process, and its ultimate meaning is the ultimate unification of the human and the divine that could affect both the personalization of the divine and the complementary divinization of perfected humans. That's Leonora Leet's quote. This is from The World in Abraham. in later Judaic esoteric thought of the Zohar, the Bahir, and the Sefer Yetzirah, and on up into modern times. So we have it from both ends, and it's interesting, isn't it, that both cultures are the two cultures that Abraham was so intimately involved in. One, the Hebrew, he was the beginning of it, and the Egyptian. He did go down into Egypt. This is so fascinating. In the 1920s, the Egyptologist Aylward Blackman contended that Pharaoh was not only the son of the sun god, Re was the sun itself, because quite frankly, the sun gives life. So the Pharaoh becoming the son of the sun, he becomes eternal like the sun. From the human perspective, the sun is eternal. It is the life giver. In the end, the king was finally looked upon as the son of all of the Egyptian divinities, male and female. That's Blackman's contention. An interesting newer view of this was presented in the 1950s. He said that in the 1920s. In the 1950s, Hans Godicki noted that the deification of a private individual who had a name similar to the famous Jed column of Osiris, but it was his deification. In the 1980s, I found further studies that shows how the dead were identified with Osiris through performing the temple rituals and other cultic activities. Louis Zabkar described how through a resurrection text, this is the coffin text, 278. I brought my coffin texts with me. I might read that to you later. The deceased, through his identification with Osiris, is supposed to achieve his own physical resurrection. J. Gwynne Griffiths, after showing that the kings became someone else, ultimately means that they needed to be endowed. What is the idea of an endowment? Including the LDS endowment idea in the temple? It is simply this. It is the process of the extension of his personality which extends toward the divine. The king becomes replete with Godhead, emphasizing the Egyptian word for God, Neter. The king assumes the rank of the superior deity. Griffiths also contends that the motivation here